Hey everybody, it's Rabbit. Welcome back to the channel. And today, Gaijin just released a new roadmap recently for 2024, and we're going to go over some of the changes in that, and a lot of it honestly is looking pretty good, although there are a few kind of unusual ones that I'm not exactly excited for. And for starters, we'll go for the stuff they listed as the first major update. First off, we have an aircraft fuel slider. It's a nice addition, although a lot of props generally run minimum fuel anyway, so while there are some jets that this will affect, especially if you're at the higher echelons, it's not going to be the biggest deal in the world, but it is a nice quality of life feature. Next up, they're solving the issue with duplicate stock air-to-air missiles. Now, if you don't know what this is, if you had AIM-9Ls and you only had 2 of them stock and you research and upgrade to add more, they will currently be in 2 separate weapon groups. So it looks like they're fixing that to make that one weapon group, which is a fantastic quality of life feature that always annoys the crap out of me, because currently the best way to use any weapons on a plane, if you have multiple types, is to swap 2 different weapon groups. So having to swap to the same group multiple times is really irritating. Next up, we have improving the synchronization of object destruction. What this means is they're going to have it happen client side before it happens server side, because previously they were kind of doing it in a weird way, so like you wouldn't necessarily see objects on the map like fences or houses that were destroyed like in real time, but it looks like they are trying to resolve that. Next up, they're doing minimap enemy aircraft in your spawn zones. This is great. I'm not sure if it'll be both Hella spawn and regular air spawn, but at least knowing that somebody is there when they're trying to camp the air spawn will be pretty nice. Next up, they're adding a tutorial for all kinds of guided weapons for aircraft, which I already kind of did a video series in the cast guide on, mostly because I noticed that was a problem. A lot of people just didn't know how to use them, didn't know what the controls were, all that stuff. So that was kind of the motivation for that series. It looks like they might be making it redundant, but then again, it is Gaijin, and they don't like explaining things very well, so we'll see what happens with that. They've also mentioned they're improving the replenishment mechanics and reducing the maximum replenishment time for ground vehicles on capture times. So essentially they're going to be reducing the amount of time it takes. They're also not going to be resetting the replenishment timers when you leave the cap zone, which is also a pretty nice quality of life feature. They didn't mention anything about specifically replenishing fire protection equipment, and I would like to see that, but it is what it is. We'll see how it comes when it comes. Next up, they're adding something for the interface. It says advanced settings for destroyed vehicles in the kill feed. What this essentially means is you'll be able to toggle clan names, usernames, you'll be able to toggle the weapon type, all that good stuff. You'll even be able to toggle the whole kill feed off from what I can tell. And I currently don't really think that's all that necessary. I could definitely understand if you're a user player, if you're a newer player, that there's probably seems like there's a little too much information. But things like shell type, if you are pretty familiar, can actually be very helpful to know what somebody's firing, whether they're firing heat or AP or whatever. So I probably won't be adjusting that, but you could if you wanted to. Next up, they have some social features. They're integrating Steam and doing a wishlist thing. It's pretty nice, but it's not really anything that really lights my fire. I'm not all that concerned about it. Next up, we have stuff for the second major update of 2024. Now, first off, we have the ability to use shafts and flares separately. Currently, there is a single countermeasure button and it fires both of them. So it's a nice feature. Unfortunately, this is adding even more keybinds to the game. So if you are in console, you're probably just gonna have to stick with regular dumping countermeasures, because having separate keybinds probably won't work, but we'll see how that ultimately works out. They're also looking at separate battle ratings for air and ground vehicles, which I've been saying they needed for a long time. So it turns out when you have 12.7 planes and 11.7 ground vehicles, it doesn't really work using those for cast options. So they'll probably do that at least. However, what other changes they're going to make, I don't really know. I could definitely see vehicles like the A4 Skyhawk potentially going up in ground RB but down in air RB, whereas right now you can't really move it in either direction, because if you move it too far down in ground RB, it's just overpowered, but if you move it too far up in air RB, it's basically useless. So that'll be a nice feature depending on how well they implement it, which is a pretty big asterisk along with a lot of these changes, but we'll see what happens with that. Next up, there's a new Air Conquest for Air Arcade. I don't really play Air Arcade. It'll probably be nice for the people that enjoy it. You also have additional effects when the armor is penetrated. They were talking about things such as shell shock or fires being specifically in the crew compartment. I'm not really sure how well this will work. We have things like volumetric and you have things like overpressure, some of which don't really work correctly, but overpressure is still better than the old mechanic of hull break, so it might be a mixed bag, although it might be really useful. They will be putting forth dev blogs on it and have people vote on it, so you should definitely read those and vote on mechanics if you actually think that if you think they're going to be beneficial to the game. They also have healing of wounded crew members. They will be voting on that. I don't know who would ever vote against it. It's so irritating to have a red gunner or a red driver and not be able to do anything about it for the entire match until you die. I really, really hope they implement it. I really hope nobody votes against it, because why would you? That just seems really idiotic to me. Like, everybody should be in favor of that. Upgrading crew models for eras. I kind of talked about this in the Chaparral video where it was still using World War II crew models. There aren't a ton of vehicles that it's relevant on for each nation, but most nations have at least 1 or 2 vehicles where the crew are just completely out of sync with the actual vehicle itself. They're also adding research bonuses for new nations. Now, they discussed it earlier, and I actually thought it was implemented last year, but apparently it wasn't, where if you have a top tier vehicle in one nation, you get a bonus to researching vehicles of a certain rank in other new nations when you start them out. Basically a way to speed you through if you already have like top tier vehicles, if you're already an experienced player. So that'll be nice when it hits, although exactly how it's going to work, I don't really know right now. Next up, you have the ability to place a vehicle into a crew slot from the research tree by dragging and dropping, and you have the ability to change the order of your crew slots. And for people that have OCD, this is going to be amazing, especially because I have no doubt whatsoever that a lot of new players have no idea what they're doing when they're arranging their crews and also when they're crewing them, so the ability to do that a lot easier is probably going to help. Next up, you have a visual selector for secondary weapons. I believe they're adding it to the multi-function menu, the ability to manually select specific weapons on a vehicle, although they're kind of unclear about that one. We'll see how it works when it's implemented. Next up, they're going to put a timer on the HUD that displays time until munitions hit their targets. They already have this on helicopters. If you fire a helicopter missile, if you look next to the AGM icon, it'll actually have the timer to hit the target, but it's not currently on planes yet, so I'm guessing that's what that's for, which is, it's a nice feature, but it's not that necessary. And lastly, for the second update, they're going to put social features where you can search for squads based on interest, which is a nice feature, but not really that necessary, but it'll be nice to have. And lastly, we have the general summer of 2024 tag, which actually could be several different updates, but going through them, new mechanics for saving aircraft at an exit zone. My best guess on this is what they're talking about is that you won't have to crash an aircraft just to get back in a ground vehicle, but I could be wrong. They're not entirely clear on exactly what this is referring to. Detailed damage models for helicopters. Man, the helicopters have been in game for a while. It is about time they have actual damage models. If you've never looked at helicopter damage model, about 50% of it is just empty space. A lot of the mechanical stuff is not modeled at all. They have very basic stuff like the engine and some of the drive shafts, but currently the helicopter damage models are incredibly bad, to the point where helicopters can survive absolutely ridiculous hits they have no business surviving, so that'll be nice. Next up, they're adding ability to control projectile fuse settings in battle. I'm not entirely sure how this will work. It could be really interesting, or it could be basically useless. It heavily depends, and obviously this is only going to be on shells that actually have that functionality. But this is one of those, I have absolutely no idea if this will be good, bad, or will do literally nothing, because the way they're wording it here is kind of vague. The next one is reworked APHE shells, changing the fragmentation. Essentially what this means is, currently in the game, when an APHE shell enters a vehicle and then explodes, it explodes in a sphere. What they're looking at, because that is not realistic, is the shell will explode, but it will explode in a cone. Because if the shell is moving forward and it detonates, it won't detonate in a 360, it will detonate in an arc in front of it. Now, this could have a lot of really serious effects on how you play the game throughout basically all of the World War II era BRs, and I'm not sure if those effects will be positive. For example, a Tiger H1, currently you can shoot the cupola on it and knock out the entire turret crew. Well, with this change, you can't do that. You would at most get the commander, which means it's actually a lot harder to engage the Tiger H1. You would almost certainly have to move it up in battle rating. And then of course you have vehicles like the Jumbo. Hitting the machine gun port might only kill the gunner and maybe the machine gunner. So there's a lot of variables in this one, and a lot of vehicles, especially ones that have wide spaced out interiors and have a lot of crew, are going to be a lot harder to kill with this change. So I'm not sure, even though it's more authentic, I'm not sure if this will be a good thing or a bad thing. At the very least, they'll have to do a lot of battle rating adjustments if they want to implement that change, because a lot of vehicles are going to get significantly worse or significantly better basically overnight. At the very least, they are going to be taking player input through voting on that one, so make sure to keep track of dev blogs if you have a strong opinion one way or the other. Next up, there is construction of replenishment zones and trenches by vehicles with limited ammunition for their main gun, so guided missile carriers, anti-airs, some things like that. I'm not entirely convinced this would be a great idea. The construction of replenishment zones could actually be pretty good, especially for a lot of the tank destroyers and guided missile carriers that have very limited ammo. I'm thinking of things like the Zoklom Togger, where you have a whopping 4 missiles and nothing else. But constructing trenches just sounds like a very weird idea, and I feel like that's open to abuse, but we'll see how that pans out. Next up, you have a new reticle for modern tank systems. I don't really care either way. I've gotten used to the old one. If the new one's annoying, I'll probably just switch it back if that's an option. Next up, you have a notification when a reported player gets banned. That's also pretty nice. I would love to actually see that one. Next up, you have the ability to recycle inventories that are not needed, orders, wagers, boosters, etc. I'm going to be honest, there are a lot of orders and wagers that I just kind of throw away for no reason because I don't really care about them, so that would be a nice feature too. Next up, they're doing customizations of your player card, and then they're also adding it to the kill feed. Now, unless they do this in a very specific way, this is potentially open to abuse, where you're going to see lots of pictures of genitalia or lots of cuss words or stuff like that. So we'll see exactly how this is implemented, but they could be opening up the floodgates for something they don't want if it's not implemented correctly, but it could also be pretty fun. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, those are all of the changes that they're looking for the roadmap for 2024. Nothing beyond summer of 2024. On the whole, I would say a lot of the changes, especially the economy changes and the quality of life changes, look pretty good. Some of the more dramatic gameplay changes, such as the additional effects when you're hit and the reworking of APHE, could be at best a mixed bag. We'll see, but feel free to let me know in the comments down below. What are your thoughts on any of these changes? Are there any that you're really looking forward to? Are there any that you really don't want to see in the game? And hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you had fun. Hope you learned something. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. That always helps out the channel. And as always, danke bitte, tschüss.